Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman who I had the pleasure of recently meeting at a networking event that we attended. She is an author, she is a wife, she's a first lady, um, true woman of God. And just to throw in an extra little bonus, she's born and raised in the hometown that I'm from, Chicago. So that adds a little spice to the show tonight, just my own personal bias. But nevertheless, she's taken time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story, with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting those of us who are tuning in, especially when it comes to dealing with the adversities and challenges of life. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you my very special guest this evening, Miss Yolanda Wilson Smith. Yolanda, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I stated to my listeners, we were actually at a author spotlight event.
Yes.
So she has some books out, I got some books out, and we had a chance to mix and mingle with other authors. So it was a really cool event, and I was grateful to have the opportunity to meet Yolanda and shared a little bit about the podcast. And it looked like it was going to be a good fit, so we had to make that happen, and here we are. So I'm excited to hear her story. I'm sure she's going to be a blessing to us all this evening. But before we jump into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our listeners a taste of who is Yolanda Wilson Smith.
Sure. Again, I'm Yolanda Wilson Smith. I'm originally from Chicago. Like you said, I'm from Chi-Town. I've been living in Texas over, I guess, about 2022, about 22, 23 years. Time go past so fast. So I've been here and I met my husband here in Texas. So my husband is Charles Richard Smith, and he is a pastor of Thy Word Missionary Baptist Church. I have three bonus children. They all grown, so we empty nesters. I have one grandson. He's 8 years old. Currently, I'm an adjunct instructor at TCC College, where I worked with adult students with autism. And our program is called First Choice, and it's on the non-credit side. So we're really helping them to navigate, independent living, how to, prepare for, college for the credit side. So these are individuals who are not quite ready for the traditional college, but helping them to navigate again, just life, community, again, how to prepare for college. And these are adult children who are graduated from high school, but want that still have that college experience. So that's currently what I'm doing right now.
That is awesome. That is awesome. That's definitely great work. Definitely needed.
And I also
For
want to, I'm sorry, and I wanted to add too, my primary trade is social worker as well. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker for the last 30 something odd years.
I like how you slid that in. It's like 30 some odd years, give or take.
Give
Give
or
or take
take.
so but again, great work that you're doing. It's already telling from the pieces of you that I already know about, as to why you do what you do even in today's time. And speaking of that, as we jump into our segments this evening, one of the things that I always like to take the time out to do with all of my guests, is take a moment of reflection about where the journey of our lives began. Because I truly do believe that a lot of times certain encounters with individuals or certain events that happen in our life, good, bad, or otherwise, that a lot of those things, even as far back as childhood, actually play a role in building up to what we ultimately land in, which is our purpose that God has called us to walk in. And, maybe as a child, it may not make a lot of sense. We may not be able to connect the dots, so to speak. But as you get older and things start to happen experiences wise, and things start to manifest themselves, the light bulbs, I believe, begin to come on, and you start to say, you know what, that's why I had to go through that. That's why I had this particular encounter here. Again, good, bad, or otherwise. So, with that said, I want to ask you to take a moment, if you would, to go back to Chicago, back to growing up, back to that childhood days, and if you would, kind of share with us what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as any particular challenges that come to mind. If you want to share those, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Sure. Again, just living in Chicago, I come from a two-parent household. My mom, my dad, and I had one sister. We grew up, pretty much normal family, but we had a very close family. always around relatives. Back in the day, you couldn't really go out and visit. Well, I know we could not go out and visit other people. Everything stayed like within the family. I really had fun memories of, relatives, on Saturday night. If it wasn't every Saturday, every other Saturday, family getting together, going to somebody's house, the parents playing cards, and the parents playing
Hmm.
cards all night. We get a chance to, all the cousins now, we get a chance to stay up a little bit late or get a chance to stay outside a little bit later. So I just remember just always we traveling from one family house to the next family house. My mom, I don't know, do you remember now this story called Gold Blast? So she used to have to work on the weekends. So my dad would take me and my sister to the park all the time, go fishing. Me and my dad, we was a night owl, so we would stay up and watch TV a lot. My mom and my sister was kind of, like early birds, so they would go to bed late. But just I just really have some good fun memories. Come from a family of entrepreneurs. Back then they called it ruckus shop. So we used to have a ruckus shop some years ago when I was coming up. Had a local grocery store coming up. So all the while my mom was still working, but my dad, he's the one who had the entrepreneur spirit in terms of owning business, having something. And that came from his mom, my grandmother, because she's from Mississippi. So she always kind of had her own business. I think that was just kind of instilled in him. But growing up, my dad, he was really strict about us having friends, coming over. We no such thing as sleepovers, anything like that. He said you're gonna have one friend, one good friend. So I think in that, um, it led me to be I didn't say socially awkward, but I didn't know how to socialize as much because, you know, I was always around family all the time.
Hmm.
So going to school, I always got bullied. I got bullied. I got, and so those are not the fun memories I have. I got called names. I got picked on. I was really skinny. Look, I can take that now. I don't be mind calling olive oil now. Look, you can call me olive oil. You can call me Sticks now, but back then, they called me olive oil, from Popeye. They would call me Pole Stick, pick on me, call me names, fighting. I just was bullied throughout my childhood, during my middle school childhood years. And I really think that stemmed from because we really couldn't have a lot of friends outside of family. And I think my father, because we was girls, I think he was just very protective of us. If I think it was left up to my mom, I think she would have been okay somewhat. Both of them were kind of protective, but I think my dad was just more protective because we were girls. And because of that, and then my mom, she used to make our clothes when we was coming up. So, we always had some of the latest fashions because my mom made our clothes. So me and my sister kind of stood out, coming up, when we was younger. But I think the flip side of that, which I never thought I was better than anybody, I wanted friends. We had friends on our block, but outside of our
Hmm.
block, that was it. You know what I'm saying? To the left of me, to the right of me, a couple of doors down, but that was it. So I think part of it is people I thought I was better, but I wasn't. I wanted to be, part of whatever was going on, but I think they saw something different. And in the result of that, it just, I don't know. I think coming up, it just kind of leave you a little bit devastated because you want to be friends with someone, the people you want to be friends with, these the one who are bullying you.
Wow, wow. First off, let me say thank you for sharing, as you have, so transparently about your childhood, and of course, a lot of what you said. Again, with us both being from Chicago, it brought back a lot of memories that were triggered from your story. I mean, everything from your mom working at Goldblatt's to the whole kind of cohesiveness of family, and friends in the neighborhood or on the block, that kind of vibe. I definitely remember the Saturday evening type of events, particularly my mom regularly would, if she wasn't hosting the
Right.
card game, somebody else is hosting
Yes.
the card game, and that kind of thing going on. Yeah, and then just and of course the entrepreneur piece, particular black community and entrepreneurship. I don't think we truly appreciated what that looked like.
Mm-mm.
Back growing up, back in the
Mm-mm.
'70s kind of thing.
Mm-mm.
But that was a very normal
Yes.
thing.
Yep. It was.
That many
Yep.
of my friends and had parents, that and including my own, at some point in time had some type of business, operation, like you said, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's a shoe repair place, whether it's a, whatever, a little restaurant, whatever the thing was, it was a beauticians. I mean, that was kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I've even referenced, even on the show before, just even in my neighborhood, like literally within like a couple with walking distance, a couple of blocks away,
Yeah.
there was a street nearby, and I know we lived on different sides of the city, but like on 89th, at that time it was like 89th and Loomis,
Mhm.
that whole strip was a series of businesses, most of which were black owned businesses. So you think about that, and like in today, you fast forward to today, you would pay premium prices to live in a neighborhood where you had that closeness of
Yes.
businesses and a strip right there within walking distance. But that was kind of again, that was just kind of a
Mhm.
normal
Yes.
existence, and
Yep.
I think it played a great role in many of us coming up, whether it was to prepare us to go into entrepreneurship, as you stated, like your dad kind of got that from your grandmother, or if nothing more, even if entrepreneurship wasn't your thing, I think it facilitated a sense of work ethic in
Yes.
you, that I think proved to be valuable perhaps in other areas. And then the other thing too that stood out to me about what you said, and talking about you had to deal with some bullying, and because you were kind of restricted in terms of your ability to have certain level of friends or whatever, that there was sometimes that feeling of you didn't quite officially call it that, but that some of that social awkwardness, if you
Yes.
will. And immediately what I thought about, as you said, that was what you do today when you talk about working with autism
Yeah.
students, because it's like they can't help that they have it, but
Right.
you can imagine that they perhaps feel socially awkward. They kind of feel like out of sorts, and here you are, somebody who not necessarily struggle with autism, but struggle with that feeling of social
Social
awkwardness,
awkwardness.
and
Yes.
here you are pouring into the lives of people to help them not feel socially awkward, to help them blend in, to be a part of everything else. So again, I'm sure
That's
you didn't
so
make the
true.
connection at the time, but it laid the foundation. We think about how God moves in our lives. He was preparing you
Yes.
for moments like this, for you to be able in a teaching setting to help people socially awkward, kind of like you were, just in their own way. But now you're helping them have a better quality of life, have a better experience, being able to assimilate, and not feel like the outcast or the strange or the odd one in the room. That they're just like everybody else. They just learn different. They just process different. So again, I don't believe these things happen by mistake or just by chance. I believe that God situates us in such a way to have these encounters, to have these experiences, in building us up to again, walking in our purpose, which is why I like to take this time to kind of reflect on that and connect those dots, because and every time that I do it, it's not something that I'm personally doing magical or anything like that. You begin to see
Mhm.
how it just begins to lay out itself, and what you do, and what interests you, and things of that nature. So again, I appreciate you
Mhm.
sharing that. This is good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So again, Yolanda, you had a great childhood coming up, and as sometimes experiences are great, sometimes they're challenging, and it doesn't change as you enter into adulthood. In fact,
No.
those experiences increase. You're going to have more good experiences, and you're going to have some more challenging experiences. But along the way, if you live long enough, every now and then we get hit with a storm that hits different,
Mhm.
hits us in a way where maybe it knocks the wind out of us, so to speak. It puts us on our backs to a point where we begin to question, perhaps doubt, maybe even fear. How am I going to get out of this? Even if I'm normally somebody that's good at navigating through challenging times, even the best of us get hit with something that we don't see a way out. We don't know how we're going to overcome this particular challenge. It's that burdensome on us. It's that overwhelming for us, and we may feel a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, if you
Mhm.
will. So, with that said, if you would tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that you were facing a situation just like that. You didn't see a way through. You didn't see a way around. You didn't see a way out of it. You didn't know how it was going to happen. Of course, you're here today. So again, we trust God made a way to provide you even the
Mhm.
opportunity to even speak on it. But back then, even being the first lady and woman of God that you are, maybe back then you were questioning, like, Lord, what you got me going through here? I don't know what this is supposed to be about. What was that experience like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of it?
Well, as you were talking, it made me think about some things. And one of the things I thought about was that because my dad, he died when I was 13 years old. So,
Mm,
13, that was pretty much devastating. So that's the one, never see you walk across the stage, never want to see you get married, your first date, all those different things. So fast forward that, because again, like I said, my parents were protected, particularly my dad. So when you get on the dating scene, that's kind of like a little bit awkward, a little bit. And again, like you say, when you bully and all these things, they just don't leave you, because as a result of that, the backlash of that, come that low self-esteem, right? That lack of confidence, kind of
mm-hmm,
losing your voice, right? Feel like your opinion doesn't matter, right? So all those things come along with that. So, and I think in one instant where I found myself in a relationship, and I just felt like it was just not productive for me. It's no, when you're young, I really love this person. I really care
mm-hmm.
about this person. You know what I'm saying? I can see myself marrying this person, right?
Right.
But deep down, you feel like, okay, this person's not right for you because they're not valuing you, the woman that I am, right?
Mm-hmm,
They're not valuing my intelligence, right? They're not valuing my opinion. So it's like one of them things, do I stay for the sake of staying because we've been in this relationship for this whole time? Or do I know move on?
mm-hmm.
And so no, now it seems so easy to say, hey, move on. But when you're in your 20s, your mid 20s, whatever, it doesn't seem as crystal clear. But at the end of the day, because I did struggle, and because of my support system, okay, they put a sounding board in front of me. Okay, look, this is what he's saying, this is what he's doing. Do you think he's really, if you marry him, you think this is really going to get any better? You
Mm,
know, so I really had to make some hard choices. So even though you might love someone, you might think, okay, we get married, the whole thing, I can what? Change him, or I can,
mm-hmm.
change her. Been there, done that, so I had to make a hard decision. I had to choose me in the process of that, and just leave the relationship. I just had to walk away from the relationship. And
Wow.
that was the
Wow.
hardest thing.
Again.
And that was the hardest thing, to do. Particularly when
Mm-hmm.
again, you're in your 20s, things just seem like,
Mm-hmm.
just crushing.
Yeah, yeah. I totally get that. Totally get that. I mean, and it happens with both men and women, and which again, why I appreciate your transparency and sharing that, because that's a very common thing. Of yeah, we all, many of us will have an array of different relationships here and there, but along that path, there's usually one before we finally reach the pinnacle of reaching that marriage point and that the final relationship that we're going to have. Usually, for many of us, not everybody, but usually for many of us, we have that one relationship that kind of stands out, that we really thought that this was special, that
Yes, yes.
he was the one, she was the one, but then as much as we wanted that to be, there was just something that was pulling on us, to saying that something in our spirit, in our gut, that was saying this is not in balance, that this is not in
Mhm.
alignment, this is you are taking low, you're settling,
Right.
and it makes you, why am I settling, do
Selling.
I, to kind of tying into what you said about the esteem issues. Sometimes when we struggle with esteem issues, and again, I want to point out to my listeners, men and women have low self-esteem issues, and men and women have been guilty of staying in relationships longer that were clearly unhealthy, that clearly were not the best situations for them. They've stayed in them longer, if for no other reason, a fear of being by yourself,
Self.
a
Mhm.
fear of, like, as if nobody else is gonna appreciate or want me, kind of, we've heard people say, at least I got somebody, it's better than being alone. Is it, is that
Right.
really, but if you're in a low self-esteem zone, you'll embrace that kind of mindset, and it becomes even more problematic if the relationship is more than just, I don't feel like I'm being heard, or things like that, and it's, in fact, it's perhaps elevated to, I'm hanging in a situation where maybe there's physical abuse being, a part of it, or or some other harmful, dangerous
Right.
type of things that are going into play, and you have men and women again holding on to something that, now you're juggling your own personal safety, your own personal well-being. And so, you know, I think it's good to have these conversations about this kind of stuff, and it's a very real challenge. But what I love about your story is, like you said, is ultimately you kind of put your emotions to the side and said, you know what, I gotta do what's best for me. This is not going to be easy to walk away. This is It's not going to make me feel good. It's going to be a bit heartbreaking, if you will, but long term, for my own peace of mind, for my own well-being, for me understanding my value and my worth, that far supersedes me just hanging in just for the sake of hanging in. And when we take it to another level, when we speak about it from a godly perspective,
Right.
that's exactly it. By being in a relationship with him, that's exactly how he wants you to understand who you are, and loving yourself, understanding that you come from a line of royalty, that you are special, that you are set apart, and that you do deserve a certain
Mhm.
a level of treatment.
Mhm.
And if that's
Mhm.
not, that's that, when you think about the whole concept of, you know, even just the concept of being equally yoked. If I'm not with somebody who's going to treat me like God says I'm supposed to be treated, you know, again, whether you're male or female, then no, it's explains why it's not working out, because
Yeah.
we're not equally yoked. We're not in alignment with one another. And again, we fast forward to today, you being the first lady that you are, being a woman of God, yeah, you don't want to just be preaching about that and talking about that. You want to be walking and living that life, you know,
Exactly.
to show that, you know, this is what's necessary. This is what's healthy. This is what's productive. But most importantly, this is God's will for me.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that we hate the people who weren't a good
Right.
fit for us. That doesn't mean that we wish harm on them or bad on them. Sometimes just things don't work out, and that's okay. I pray for you. I wish nothing but the best for you, but I ultimately have to love myself. Something I tell my listeners from time to time, I guess from time to time, that my stepdad used to say. He talked about that healthy selfishness, you
Mhm.
know, where you just truly, you know, love you. I even had a guest recently say, you know, love yourself so much that when other people love you, it's like a bonus. I mean, it's just extra. But I love myself so much that if nobody ever says it to me, then if nobody ever makes me feel that way, I make me feel that way enough to where
Mhm.
I'm not dependent upon somebody else per se telling me that they have love for me, because I think
Mhm.
enough of me to know what, again, to know what my value, to know what my worth
Mhm.
is, you know.
Mhm.
So that's a sign of growth, both, you know, from a maturity standpoint and of course from a spiritual standpoint. So
Mhm.
again, I appreciate you sharing that very real things, and I'm sure many of our listeners are either currently struggling in that, or have been there and done that before, and you know, and I've been guilty of it myself, you know, and you know, settling. You know, don't get comfortable with settling. Don't get comfortable in
Mhm.
compromising your self worth, your integrity, your character, just to say you got somebody,
I'm in a
because
relationship, right?
yeah, you're the one who ends up suffering long term,
Mhm.
in regards to that. So again, appreciate you sharing that. So, Yolanda, when you do find yourself facing challenging times, you know, again, sometimes the challenges are
Mhm.
heavy and burdensome and what have you, and then sometimes it's just the day-to-day nuances of life, just lifing type stuff.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, what I am curious to know from you is, in such moments of adversity, in such moments of challenging times, what is it that you personally like to do that kind of allows you to be locked in and focused as you're processing and dealing with whatever moment of challenge or adversity that you're dealing with? Like, what's your routine, your regiment that works best for you in those situations?
Well, no, and I'm going to tag on a little bit what you said a minute ago and then bring it fast forward because, when I was in that relationship, and you talk about spirituality, talk about God, my 20s, I knew of God, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? But I knew enough not to be in that relationship. But even that little bit of knowing, going to church, having that value kind of set the tone for my life. But it wasn't until I had developed a relationship with Him that I
Mm-hmm.
began to fully understand. So now, in terms of dealing with adversities, it's really about giving it to God, praying. I know a lot of people say that, but it's not about, okay, I'm here, God, I'm going to give it to you. But it's like, okay, what is in His word that I can rely on? What can I get out of His word that's going to comfort me? That's going to help me through this adversity. What's going to, like, okay, I can do all things through Christ. Trouble don't last always. Something, what is in His word that I can hang on to? Delight myself in the Lord. So back then I knew of Him. And that's okay because you have to have a starting point, right? Because God he working where you at.
Right.
So, but in knowing him and because of these issues I had in my life, I got to know him real good. Because when you get that bump in your head,
Mhm.
God said, now you ready for me, right? So I
Exactly.
think so. Just going through these adversity, it just got me closer to Him, praying. Going to the Bible study. Taking care of myself, having a good support system. So pretty much that's how I kind of get through my adversities. Having some me time. I'm all about self care. I have always been about self care. How can I take care of me? Taking a step back to reflect. Okay, and also too, where am I in this? Because we can't like point fingers all the time. Okay, what do
Mhm.
I need to do differently? God showed me. Because a lot of times we don't want God to show us. He want us. We want God to fix that person.
Right.
Get on that person. It's always about the other person. But I have learned over the years, Lord, show me so I can grow, so I can learn, and so I won't keep bumping my head. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to keep going to God for the same old thing all the time. And that's what I did when I was younger. It was the same thing repetitively to one day I woke up. I'm like, okay, you know what? My authenticity is in him. No, my identity is in him. So when I realized that my identity was in him, my life was in him, then my life changed, my perspective changed. And the only way your perspective can change and go, you can change like whatever you may be going through is that because everything lies within him. So that's what I had to learn over the years and continue to learn. So this is not something that you just, you acquire and then you done. It's a daily thing. It's like, renewing my mind, renewing my spirit. It's a day by day thing because you get different challenges, right? You get different things going on in your life. So my mind had to be sometimes renewed minute by minute. So I don't love myself until thinking that I have arrived. Okay, I don't believe into myself. Okay, it's this person. Lord, what is it in me that I need to change? What do I need to do differently? How can I hear from you? So it's all about being more attuned to God so I can hear from him. Because you know what, one of the books that I wrote, and I'm not trying to put a plug, is about being busy. Sometimes we get so distracted and so busy we don't have enough time to heal. And sometimes you have to sit and listen so you can heal, so you can heal from your adversity, so you can heal from your challenges. And you cannot do that if you're busy or you're too busy blaming other people. So you have to get out of the blaming game, for one. Listen to God, and then surround yourself with supportive people. And that's why I have a really good, close circle of people that I know that truly have my back. Because you have to be vulnerable with someone. That's another thing too. You walk around, oh, you're a Christian, you're supposed to go through this, or you're supposed to say this, or you're supposed to feel this way. Forget that. You know what? That's why people get depressed, they on pills and all that stuff. Not me. You have to be vulnerable with someone. You have to. God created us for relationships, right? God created us for connections. So we have to use those resources in our lives.
Love that. Love that. Again, so much to unpack from what you said. I liked how you made reference, and don't apologize for plugging your book. 'Cause we're gonna plug all our stuff too. But I like how you pointed out about the importance about sitting still and hearing from God, because a lot of times, even for those of us who understand the power of prayer, we'll go to God with our prayer, but then instead of sitting back and letting him respond, we're too busy trying to tell him how he's supposed to answer the prayer instead of
Right.
letting him guide that process. What you
Right.
come to me for? Why
Right.
you asking me for help, and then you're gonna tell me how to fix it? I,
Right.
I thought you didn't know what you was doing.
Right.
So what you come to me for then if you're gonna tell me how to do it? I thought I was the one that was God and you was the one that I created, which is where we got the roles mixed up. But it's so important because as you
Yeah.
said, that healing process, it requires the transparency, that vulnerability. It requires again, you sitting still and hearing from God. It requires you doing a self-assessment of you. Like, don't be so quick to jump into the victim role, and it's everybody else's fault but mine. Whether it's the job's fault, it's that person's fault, it's her fault, it's his fault, it's their fault, It's the economy's fault. It's the what part are you in this?
Right.
Because typically when there's some mess going on in our lives, we got something. Even if as jacked up as it might be, there's some part of it that we could have done differently.
Right.
That could have that perhaps contributed to us being in this jam that we're in. Whether we didn't speak up, whether
Right.
we or whether we were too silent, um,
Yes.
whether we
That
tried
would
to go
that, that would have been
solo.
me. That would have been me right there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sometimes it's because we in this mess because we've been flying solo, forgetting that God is here, just trying to do. We're gonna fix ourselves, all that kind of thing. So yeah, if I'm gonna ignite that healing process, it requires that whole, all of those factors that you mentioned, and that is even inclusive of even throwing in the forgiveness piece, because
Yes.
the forgiveness piece is what ultimately triggers that healing process, whether you're forgiving other people for wrongs that they've committed to you towards you, or in many cases you forgiving you, that
Yes.
you giving yourself some grace to say, you know what, yeah, I messed up, that was on me, I bumped my head like you said, but we all fall short. It's not about me making excuses. I acknowledge what I did, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not going to drown in my misery, because that's what the enemy wants you to do. He wants you to keep on
Exactly.
punishing yourself. Oh, God
Yourself.
done
Yes.
already forgave you for it. He done moved on, and you just keep replaying it over and over again. And the enemy is just rubbing his hands together, enjoying it, because loving to see you in that that standstill, like you're trying to trudge through quicksand, and it's a quicksand that you created. Instead of just coming on, let's pull it together. You have the right to have your moment, whatever that
Right.
emotional moment, that feeling, have the moment, but just don't stay stuck there. That's what's so
Exactly.
critical, that you can't stay stuck there, and that's exactly the things that you spoke to. Don't make it all about you. Don't get wallow in your own misery. And then you also said earlier about, when we were talking about that bump in our head, God will allow, some of these storms to come your way, just because he understands that it's necessary for you to go through it, because it may be the trigger that's going to ultimately get your attention to him. If I let this play out, not because I'm trying to destroy you, not because I'm trying to hurt you, but I'm trying to get your attention, to where you get to a point where you ain't got nobody to talk to but me,
To God.
you know, then okay, now that I have your attention, and if you just sit still and listen, now I can tell you how to work your way through this, and how I'm going to be the lead on making sure that you do so. That's when that becomes your mindset, particularly as it comes to dealing with the adversities and challenges of life, as you spoke to. The way you look at those storms of life is completely different now, because now you're viewing it through godly lenses rather than worldly lenses. You're seeing the
Exactly.
storms as God sees it, which is an opportunity to grow and develop you, to strengthen you, to elevate you, rather than you looking at through the worldly lenses of, I'm the victim, everybody's coming at me, the where, life unfair, we don't get caught up in the pity party game, you know. We all got to go through our stuff, but when you understand how God uses those events, you don't look at them as negative events anymore. Yes, they could be trying. Yes, they
Yes.
can test
Yes.
your patience. Yes,
Yes.
they don't always feel good, but
No.
it's worth it. And when you understand His role in it, it's worth the minor inconvenience,
Yeah.
when you know at the end the blessing that will come up out of that, whether it's a blessing that you personally receive, or whether it's simply equipping you to be a blessing to someone else. Because that's the other piece of those storms in life, is that half the storms that we go through, it was never about you to begin with.
No.
It was to equip you so that you could be prepared to bless somebody else. So sometimes God will let us go through what we go through, just because He's setting you up for the person that you're not going to even meet for months, maybe even years from now, that you're going to encounter. But that experience that you're going through today is setting you up so you can bless that person tomorrow. Whatever that is, when God is behind it, it's a win-win either way, whether I receive it or whether I'm pouring it into somebody else. So all of what you said is excellent. Having that circle of people that you can trust and be transparent and vulnerable in front of, big piece. So for any of my listeners, if you don't currently have that circle, if you don't currently have a system at all in place as to how you're dealing with challenges and adversities, Yolanda's giving you some very key things that you can use as starting points, to begin to build that process. And it doesn't
No.
happen overnight, and it's always something you're going to
Hmm.
refine and tune and tweak here and there as appropriate. There might be some people in the circle that you remove from the
Yes,
circle and you
ma'am.
bring somebody else into the circle, depending upon how
Yep.
life is lifing and how how those relationships are developing or perhaps outgrowing it themselves. You just never know. But it is definitely important for you to have that support in place, and of course, ultimately relying upon God to handle all your situations, because we know that He is the ultimate problem solver. So nothing is too big for Him. And so, you don't have to fly solo in these situations of adversity. So, again, great stuff that you shared there. Um, so, Yolanda, as you reflect back on all your experiences of life, good, bad, everything in between, um, if you had the opportunity to sit across the table from the younger Yolanda, the Yolanda who didn't always feel like she had a voice, the Yolanda who maybe felt socially awkward at times, the Yolanda who might have felt like she settled and, in situations that she didn't have to. If you could speak to her and offer up some words of encouragement, some words of insight that you wish she would have known, that you think would have been beneficial to her, as well as to any of our listeners who may be going through that same cycle right now. They don't, the self-esteem is at a low. They don't know what their voice is. They're trying to figure out healthy ways to deal with challenging moments of adversity. What would be your words of encouragement to younger Yolanda, as well as to any of those listeners who are kind of dealing with some of the stuff that you've kind of been there and done that, and know what that feels like?
I think the advice I can give that, this too shall pass. It doesn't last always. You know, Sometimes when we're in a situation, we thinking it's permanent, but sometimes we're only dealing with a temporary situation. But we attach a lifetime of this is forever. It's only going to be temporary. Things do get better in the long run. Again, you have to trust someone, because I think when you deal with low self-esteem and lack of confidence because of bullying, sometimes you lose trust in people. But it's so important that you just find that one trusted friend. Like my father used to say, find that one friend. So going back to that, so he wasn't lying. Just find that one friend and that one person that you can trust, that you can talk to, be vulnerable with. Even if you got to seek counseling, again, I'm a clinician for 30 plus years. Some people, need counseling. It's nothing wrong with that. But I think for me was that, it's going to be okay. I had to allow myself to trust people, because I really lacked in trusting people kind of throughout the year. So just open that door a little bit. And also, to know that I am worthy. You know what I'm saying? I deserve good things, because a lot of times you tell yourself, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve that, that I am worthy of deserving everything that God has for me. And staying connected, to a church, spiritually, having that relationship with God. And not to say a church, because that was a safe place for me, where I didn't feel like I was bullied. Even
Mm-hmm.
though,
Mm-hmm.
you might not understand all when you're younger. When I was younger, I might not understand all the particulars, but that was a safe place for me. So I think just having some type of spiritual foundation, and then just know that it's not going to last, and just finding that one person that you can trust, that you can talk to, that you can definitely be vulnerable with, and just knowing that you are worthy, and that, what, God's going to use it later on. Like you said, God is going to use whatever you're going through. God is going to use it later on in life. So whatever you're going through, it's not for a reason. I mean, it's not for it's yeah, not for a reason. You know what I'm saying? That God is going to use it, so it's not of use. But what I'm trying to say is that God is going to use you, and it's not going to go to waste, whatever God has set for you. That's what I'm trying to say. That
Mm-hmm.
it's for a reason. That's what I'm trying to say. It's for a reason. Whatever you're going through, it is for a reason. And sometimes it don't get revealed until later into life. And you can be able to share and to relate to people, because God's going to take that and put you on another platform to help other people. Little that I know, again, my background is social work, helping people. You brought out, working with, this vulnerable population with autism, these self-help books I'm, writing, how to be authentic, for busy women, how to live your best life. So all these different things, I would not have had that if I wouldn't have gone through what I went through. My life would have been something totally different. It would have been a different trajectory in my life. So I think that just know that God, He's going to use it later on in life, even though you might not see it right now, but He's going to use it for His glory. So it's all about Him getting the glory and Him using us
Love that. Love that. Very well said. Very well said. You hit all the hot points that we needed to hear, and again, very applicable advisement that for those of you who again have struggled with how to deal properly with adversities and challenges, she shared some nuggets with you that you can apply right now. That you can begin to fill in those gaps and apply immediately. But it always goes back. The starting point is that relationship with God. And including him in all aspects of your life. And it doesn't mean that you won't go through stuff. You're definitely going to go through stuff. It's
Yes.
just how you process it, how you go through it, where your head space is at, that peace of mind that you have in going through it. It doesn't weigh on you the same way when you're doing it with him versus when you're trying to again fly solo and doing it on your own. And because just know from my own personal experiences, anytime I tried to fly solo, do it my way, and didn't incorporate him, I'm either gonna make it last longer than it needed to, or I'm gonna mess it up altogether, send myself through unnecessary changes that I didn't have to go through. But when I did trust and let him take the lead, he's always not only taking care of what needed to be taken care of, but he exceeded the expectation of what I had for it. It was nothing that I thought it would be. It wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be, or on the flip side, it was greater than I could have ever imagined in a good way. So all of that stuff matters, and again, you hit those points very well, and this is again something that we can definitely apply right away. So Yolanda, this has been an awesome, awesome conversation. I knew it would be, and you've definitely exceeded that expectation as well. Appreciate your transparency and sharing your story, sharing your journey. I've been blessed. I know my listeners have been blessed. So again, I thank you for that. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we do want to take the opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up, to acknowledge you. So if you got anything that's going on professionally and or personally, or that's coming up down the road, we want to know all about it, how we can connect it, how we can follow along, how to support it. Let us know, what do we need to be checking out and looking forward to when it comes to you and the works that God has for you to be doing. What's going on with you, Yolanda, that we need to be tapping into?
All right. Know what? This is hot off the press. First for you. I
All
just
right.
I'm releasing my new book. Matter of fact, I'm going to get the name of it right here. It's Unplug and Exhale. It's a 60-day devotional for busy women. If I can show that right there. So
Absolutely.
hot off the press. It's still in its editing mode. But I'm gonna be having a book signing soon. It's gonna be May 31st from 11 to 1 at Cup O Vine in Cup of Vibe in Arlington. May 31st. So that's coming up.
Awesome.
So I'm
Awesome.
looking forward to that. And also too, I volunteer at a place called Pathway Adult Living. It's a licensed facility working with individuals with mental health issues, and they create a space for them to stay where they can, again, be integrated into a supportive environment, help them with medication management and independent living skills and so forth. These are adults, and they can be having something coming on later on this in a few months. And so I would definitely, if you want to visit my website, Yolanda Wilson Smith. Let me go to my Facebook, Yolanda Wilson Smith. That's my no hyphen on my Facebook page. And then you got Pathway Adult Living. You can look up their page too. In a couple of months, they're going to have something coming up as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, to my listeners, you know how to connect with her. She's got an upcoming book. She has other writings as well. So tap into her products and services. Be a support of that. Yeah, or if you know somebody who could benefit from the works that she's doing, gift somebody that and pass it along. Share the wealth with everybody, because we all dealing with our challenges and things of that nature. And so, people like Yolanda trying to walk in the way that for her, using the gifts that he's placed inside of her, to pour into the lives of other people, and doing it so selflessly, so genuinely, so willingly, and so openly. You got to appreciate that, and it's a great work that she's doing. And if nothing more, just keep her lifted in prayer, and
Yes.
what God is doing for her, because as she stated, even the believer, who normally is, tagged with the responsibility of being that encourager. Every now and then, the encourager needs to be encouraged too. Even the first lady, she needs to be
Yes.
encouraged too. She needs some
Yes.
love shown on her
Yes.
too.
Yes. Yes.
So she's no different than any of us. We all need that covering. We all need that, that support, that encouragement, that uplifting, because these are challenging days and challenging times, and there's a lot of distractions out there to kind of get us out of get us in our feelings and have us, thinking some kind of way, and that's not always a good way. So it's great to know that you got people, whether we know you personally or whether you're covering us from a distance. We all still we got to make sure we get the receiving of it, end of it. So we welcome all of that. And for those of you, if you of course that again we both are authors. If you haven't had a chance to pick up my latest book, Blessings in the Street Special Edition, you can check it out on Amazon, or you can reach out to me directly if you'd like to get an autographed copy of it. Visit me at mrjosephbrobertscard.com, or you can check me out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the TikTok, whatever way you want to tap in. So again, you got two people here just trying to do the works of God best way we know how, letting Him guide our steps. We're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to sit here in front like that. That's why we do what
Mm-hmm.
we do here. That's why we share as we share here, to let you know that, hey, we relate to the fact that we all deal with these challenges and adversities. We're no different than any of you. But again, ultimately, and I can't say it enough, it begins with you having that relationship with God. That is so
Yeah.
critical, so important. And if you don't currently have that relationship, I'm here to tell you, today is a mighty fine day to make that happen. And I promise you, it'll be the best decision in life that you will ever make. We're not telling you something that we heard about. We're telling you something that we
Something
know
that we know.
firsthand, personal experience, how He's
Mhm.
moved, how He's made ways out of no way, how He's comforted, encouraged, supported, just been that true friend in need when we needed that father, that loving unconditionally that we needed when nobody else was around, when we were in our lowest and darkest times. He was always there
It's
for us,
there.
and He will be
Yes.
there for you too. So we don't want you to miss out on such opportunities, which is why we go out of our way to share that, share Him with you, as well as to share our own, again, personal testimonies with you, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about: inspiring, encouraging, uplifting. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your. I am your host, Joseph B. Ross. And I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, continue to fight that good fight. Continue to not do life by yourself, because there's a God who wants that intimacy. He wants that relationship with you. Grab hold to it. Don't let go, and just watch Him do miraculous and wonderful things in all facets of your life, tapping into you in ways that you never thought imaginable, where you can not only be a blessing to other people, but also, of course, receive the blessings that He has for you. So until next time, you take care of yourself and have a great rest of your evening. I'll see you again.